there, sweet peas. Welcome back to Friendless, where we are closing out April celebrating the power and messiness of friendship and community. I'm your host, James Avramenko, and today I'm going to be reflecting back on some of the most captivating, inspiring, and vulnerable moments from the last batch of conversations on the show. If you're new here or missed an episode, think of this as your cheat sheet. But if you've been along for the whole ride, trust me, there's still going to be some gems here for you. Not only are we doing reflection, we've also got listener questions. We've got an end of the month playlist recommendation, so much more. It's a packed episode, so let's get to it. It's time to lean back, get comfy, set your volume at a reasonable level, and enjoy this review of April episode here on Friendless. So, April was a month that happened. The sun has returned, bringing with it my will to live. I find myself a little resentful when I realize what an impact sunshine has on my mental health. It's kind of like, I have one of those moments like, oh, right, I am a monkey designed to be in the sunshine whose entire existence has been conditioned to revolve around an artificial schedule designed by factory owners in the 19th century, which is in direct conflict with how my nervous system has evolved over the millennia. But whoops. But with the return of the sun has, of course, come the return of Friendless. And I wanted to try implementing a couple new ideas into these kind of review episodes. One thing is that I really want to use this reflection time as kind of a way to track my own personal development and my own personal growth around friendships and connections. And hopefully this will maybe inspire listeners to try doing the same. I've been listening to guests make suggestions, actionable steps, tools that we could try for years now. And admittedly, I haven't always been the most active in actually going out and applying those steps after the interview. Personally, I am very much served by an almost constant stream of reminders to do something. Until I either just full-chestedly reject that suggestion or it becomes second nature. And so my personal objective right now is to essentially create enough of a routine with some of these tips that they become subconscious. I'm not somebody who's ever been truly convinced that people change, but I've also always held that long ingrained millennial delusion that, I'm special. So I still believe that I can change. But, honestly, even say that out loud, that's flimsy because I do believe people change. I think they can change. I just think that they have to be the ones who want it, right? If you see somebody behaving some way or if somebody's treating you some way or whatever it might be, no amount of scolding, coaching, guidance, or anywhere on the spectrum of that behavior is going to actually affect any true change in someone else. You have to want to do it for yourself. And I'm at an impasse. I'm very much in a place where I really like myself. I really like who I am. I really like how I show up in the world. I really like how I show up in so many facets of my life. And at the same time, too, I also really do want to continue practicing more effective ways of showing up, not only for myself, but for my community. How can I apply what I'm learning in my different therapies to be a more effective member of my community? And so one of the ways I want to do that is by reflecting back on the work I have done and the people I've spoken to, and kind of pull out some of those gold nuggets that sometimes get kind of lost in the sort of flood of the full length episode or interview. If I'm being completely honest, April wasn't exactly a high watermark month for me personally in terms of maintaining or fostering connections. But that is also a little bit intentional on my part. As I mentioned last month, I have started my third unit of dialectical behavior therapy, and this unit is centered around distress tolerance. Now, I do plan on doing a much longer exploration of the topic of DBT in future episodes. It's literally going to have to take multiple episodes. There's no way I could cover all of it in one. So I'm going to do a much deeper look at each segment. But what It simply boils down to, in a lot of ways, is the idea of what a dialectic is. A dialectic is allowing for two things that may or may not appear in conflict with each other to be accepted as truth at the same time. And when it comes to DBT, it's the idea of holding the dialectic of acceptance and change at the same time. Accepting what is real and then figuring out what you can do about it, if anything. And different skills are centered around those two dialectics. So some skills are about how do you change a situation. Some skills are about how do you accept the situation. And currently with the distress tolerance unit that I'm in, it's focused on acceptance. And so it's not framed around a lot of what you might perceive as actionable steps, even though there is a lot of, stuff to do, obviously. It's not about changing the scenario. It's about looking at the scenario as realistically as you can and accepting it for what it is. So a lot of my kind of internal work, especially recently, has been a lot more geared towards internally accepting situations and the sort of reality of my life, and not necessarily, depending on the scenario, as actively engaging as I may have in the past. Now, that has admittedly had a little bit of a domino effect in that it has also kind of removed me from more consistent communication or consistent connection with people in my life. So it is this thing of, it's a tightrope walk, right? And it's a balancing act. And if I've learned anything from Scott, it's that even those metaphors are rickety at best in that there's no solution, right? There's no puzzle to solve because there is no answer to any of it. So even trying to frame it as these kind of balances is sort of in some ways kind of missing the point. It's about situational behavior. And lately the situation has been I have been pulled back. And going forward in reflection, my aim is to be more engaged. Let's put it like that. That's a very rambly, circular way of saying a very simple thing in a very complicated way. And the other side of that is recognizing that any action, if it's an effective application of your intention, is quote unquote good, right? And even that, again, I'm trying my best to be quite tentative or hesitant or at least mindful around the usage of words like good or bad, right or wrong, things like this. I'm trying really hard to ingrain myself with the idea of effective and ineffective. And this is a piece of the intention around these reflections, is this idea of, recognizing that while I might not feel like I have done much, just based on my own, inability to have any kind of object permanence or anything like that. When I actually look back on the month and I look back on what I have done, I can see some really marked moments of great connection and great interaction and great relationship building. And one of those pieces is in celebrating the guests that I have had on the show. Starting out the season with Dean Spade, who a month after talking to him, I feel like I'm still floating and still needing to go back to that interview and just review all the incredible wisdom that he shared with me. Dean has this incredible gift of hacking a single thought or a single breath with like 9 nuggets of wisdom. He's just so deeply considerate and has so clearly done the work to reflect back such a nuanced perspective in the world. And I feel like that interview really fundamentally set the tone, not only for this month's interviews, but for really the coming season of the show, by really digging into what it actually means to seek liberation in our relationships and within our communities. The way he urged us to get really comfortable with direct feedback, to speak plainly what you need and to respond accordingly to others' needs. I think is just such an invaluable practice. But one of the lines that has really, really stuck with me was this quote that he shared about inspiration is the greatest protection. That's been something that I have been thinking about deeply all month. And it's this idea of grounding ourselves in what inspires and moves us in order to give us real safety and agency, and not just sort of the illusion of safety. Agency is really a question that is at the center of not only that interview, but so much of what is going on within the sort of political and cultural and social conversations. Who is allowed to have agency? Who is accepted to have agency? Why are some people not allowed to have agency of their own bodies or of their own choices? Why do we judge certain people's agencies? All these questions have to become much more of a forethought. They have to be front runner thoughts in how we show up for ourselves and how we show up for a community. As Dean himself said in the episode, what does it mean to actually respond to the current crisis? Not just react out of habit, but to get present and really try to reduce suffering together. Obviously, if you haven't listened to the interview yet, please go and listen to the episode. And if you haven't found a copy of Dean's book, Love in a Fucked Up World, go out and buy it as soon as you can. Get it at the library. By any means, read that book. It will change your life. I followed that interview up with one of my local heroes and massive crushes, Ravenous Randy Myers, who gave us what you could almost describe as a masterclass in embracing vulnerability within performance. The stories they shared around evolving their wrestling persona and centering it all around authenticity, vulnerability, and that punk ethos of how to share openly about mental health, about queerness, but framing it all around what I consider to be the greatest art form on earth, professional wrestling, and how to sort of bridge the gap of what you might call sort of like trash art into a much deeper exploration of really what it means to be a human and what it means to present your authentic self to the world. As Randy said, the only fake thing in my act was pretending to be an athlete at first. But letting loose, being honest about my depression and then about my queerness, that turned the connection with fans into something real. And I just, I found myself really floored afterwards on reflection of all the stories that Randy shared. And I really tried to take their advice to heart when they said being a better friend was as simple and as clear, if only, slightly intimidating, which is to celebrate what brings you joy loudly and publicly. Wear the band shirt, post about your niche interests, go out, support your friends' shows, whatever it is, be loud about it and be proud about it, because it's those places where community truly takes root and where you can truly flourish in your most authentic self. Just a note, I am reading out the quotes because I have not yet gotten good enough to figure out how to find the audio from other episodes and splice it into current episodes. So I'm doing it the old-fashioned way of just saying, well, they said this. My next interview, of course, was with the genuine multi-hyphenate. Let me cut that in a moment. My next conversation was with the genuine multi-hyphenate Amy Lester, and what an absolute joy it was to catch up with her. I found that conversation was really a reminder that not all communities that you feel safe in are actually inherently safe. And the stories that she told about, clowning and acting, leading her into this, grassroots organizing route, I just found so inspiring. The passion behind the work that she does is something that I respond. Something she said that I have thought about for a long time since the interview was, honesty is the highest level of respect. I'm hopeful that more people will really understand what they want and realize we all collectively gain more than we do in smaller chunks. Her advice was something that I really did take to heart. We had recorded that interview months ago at the tail end of the last season, and it had gotten delayed. But I had reflected on what she had come up with as an actionable step, and I had tried really hard to implement it in my kind of daily practice. And she says to just embrace those quick thinking of you messages. Don't allow anxiety or the fear of scheduling or making it a real big hangout. Don't allow those to choke off what can be a really easy and genuinely caring connection by just contacting with just quick little, hey, how the hell are yous, right? Back in the day, a former guest from previous seasons, Daniel Johnson, always says he sends texts that just say, how you living? And that has changed my life for the better. And then, of course, lastly, but most recently, was just a massive thank you to Brett Cassidy, the psychedelic folk singer, who shared real deep stories about his artistic journey. Moving from the band that he is in to doing his solo work, and how he didn't let lockdown stop him from continuing his artistic expression. I loved his perspective on friendship, and it is something that I think I do, but I think hearing him vocalize it and hearing the way he framed it is something that I found really remarkable and something that I wanted to highlight. And it was this idea of how, he considers anyone he cares for as a friend, and he tries to celebrate those bonds. Whether there's long gaps in between or more consistency, whatever it might be, he never allows the warmth of that care to diminish the friendship. As he said in the episode, anyone I care about on any level to me is a friend. The people I'm closest with are the ones who know I disappear sometimes, but still check in anyway. And that, we need more people like Brett's friends who understand that sometimes we get weird with it, and doesn't mean we don't love you, but maybe we need some prompting. But really, that is one of the focal points of what I'm trying to emphasize, is this idea of something I'm trying to be more effective around is being the one to prompt the reach out and not just rely on others to do it for me, right? The phone works both ways, right? And of course, his prompt was something that has come up time and time again, and I think it's an absolute timeless piece of advice, and it's something that I'm constantly trying to work on, which is that if you think of someone, if there's someone you miss, if there's someone you haven't spoken to, if they pop in your head, tell them. Let them know. Reach out. Just say, even if it's a reply on an Instagram story, whatever it might be, but message them and just say, hey, how are you doing? Thinking about you. And leave it at that. It doesn't have to be these grand, big gestures. It can just be as simple as, you're on my mind. Show people you care about them. Let them know. People aren't mind readers. And so if you think of them, you have to tell them in order for them to know that you've thought of them. So kind of looking at the whole of this batch of interviews, I've realized a few themes or kind of threads kept reoccurring. One was the necessity of vulnerability. Whether it was, talking with Amy about clowning, about Brett on friendship breakups, or with Randy discussing mental health in the professional wrestling, every guest reminded us that showing up as your full, complicated self is truly the key to building genuine relationships, which leads to the next point of authenticity, not perfection. From renegotiating what success means to reminding yourself, as I always love to talk about, that want to matters so much more than have to. it creates a sort of an invitation to live and to connect on your own terms. And lastly, community is an action. It's not just about who you belong to. It comes back to this idea that Dean talked about with promiscuous support systems, or Amy's organizing. It really drives home the idea that being in community is about more than just a shared label. It's about how are you actively showing up? How are you giving? How are you receiving? And how are you having the genuinely hard conversations together, recognizing that ruptures will happen because that is just the nature of humans. But how are you repairing is what really, really matters. So I want to boil this segment down into a couple actionable steps. As I often leave that piece to the end of the interview, but here we've got a different structure. So let's see if we can come up with a couple things that I'm going to try practicing, and maybe you can too. So in a way to make it not quite so overwhelming, I've distilled it down into 4 action steps that you can try out this month. So first is practice direct feedback. Pick a low stakes opportunity to practice honest feedback with a friend. Maybe it's something like, hey, I actually prefer to go to a coffee shop instead of the bar. Or maybe we can meet up at this time that works better for me, right? But direct feedback. Stop worrying about what other people think or what other people want, and instead listen to what you want. And in turn, the other side of that direct feedback is create a space that allows others to be heard within. So if someone comes to you and they have a piece of feedback for you, don't jump immediately to why they're wrong or pushing back or whatever it might be. Just allow yourself to hear it, to take it in. They might be right, but they might be wrong. Who knows? Who cares? In that moment, it doesn't matter. What matters is listen, take it in, validate them, and allow them to feel like they have been heard and that they are in front of someone who respects and cares for them. Secondly is do a quick check-in. As we said, don't wait for the perfect catch-up. Just send a thinking of you text. Maybe it's you share a meme about something that your friend likes. Maybe it's just a quick how you live in text. Whatever it is, make it fast and make sure you're sending it to somebody who you haven't spoken to in a while, but really wish you had. The next one comes from Randy, and it's where you're weird. Be visibly, unapologetically enthusiastic about what you are passionate about. Find that thing that you feel is your quote-unquote guilty shame, which, sidebar, doesn't exist in my lexicon. There's no such thing as guilty pleasure. That's what I meant to say earlier. I think I said guilty shame. Guilty pleasure is what I meant. There's no such thing as a guilty pleasure. There is only things that give you pleasure. The only reason you may or may not feel any guilt around that is if that pleasure causes other people's pain. Maybe that's a thing to question, but really liking Pokemon isn't something you should feel ashamed about, no matter what age you are. Really liking making ships in bottles is not something to be embarrassed about, right? Maybe if you take pleasure in like punching people, non-consensually, that's maybe something to question. But if what you think is weird only causes you pleasure, wear it loud, baby, loud and proud. If you want to make a post about something, tag Friendless in it. Let me see your weirds. I would love to see that stuff. And lastly, and this really comes back to just a general term, something that I'm really trying to push, mostly because I'm now getting back out into the community again, reading my poetry, presenting my comedy, whatever it might be. Support local art. Go out, find a show, buy a zine, pay for the ticket. Don't ask your broke actor friend for a comp to their play. Buy a ticket. Go to opening night. Support your artists' friends. Every little effort counts. If you see somebody has launched a book, buy that book. You can go without, buying Heather's pick this week, right? You could support a local artist and change their lives. As an independent artist, I can tell you every single person who has ever bought one of my books, anybody who has ever come to one of my readings, one of my comedy shows, whatever it might be, it has meant the absolute world to me. And on their side, it probably didn't cost them all that much in the grand scheme of things. So go out there. If you know an artist, go buy their art. Go support their show, whatever it might be. And the last thing, I talked last month about really wanting to generate a little bit more interaction with my listeners. And this is one way I wanted to do it, is I wanted to put one of the questions that I ask my guests, I wanted to put it out to listeners and see what your answers are. Now, at the time of recording this, it's the day of the Canadian federal election. I don't know what the results are going to be. I don't know if tomorrow is going to be a very dark wake up or not. But as I've talked about many times on the show, I still believe in the veracity and in the clarity of holding on to hope. I do not find it to be delusional, and I do not find it to be a waste of focus or energy. I think it's just as important to focus on the good as it is on the bad. And so I ask you, what gives you hope when things feel especially dark? There's been countless examples throughout the years as I've asked this question. Most recently, talking about finding inspiration in brave acts of solidarity or watching friends and loved ones bloom creatively or in whatever capacity they want. Or just simply knowing that there are people out there who are fighting, creating, and showing up for all the causes that truly matter. It's these moments, it's these reflections that for me, and hopefully for you listening, are what remind me that we can always reach for deeper connections. We can always build deeper relationships. And I think now more than ever, it's really important that we lean into that when our cultures and our politics and so much of the messaging online seems to be driven towards pushing us away from each other. And so I choose to lean in, and I'd like to hear what inspires you to lean in as well. Speaking of listener questions, listener responses, I guess. I just jumped the shark there, didn't I? I wanted to move into the next segment and answer a couple listener questions. I've been receiving some open-ended DMs over the month. I also have a bit of a backlog of questions that I never got to in the last season, so I'm just going to get to 2 or 3 today. But if you, in listening to the show or at any time, if you ever have a question for me and you want it answered on the show, please reach out, message me, DM me either on Instagram or on TikTok. Email me, friendlesspod@gmail.com. Find a way to get in touch with me. I love to hear from you, and I would love to answer your question on a future episode. But with that, let's dive into the first question. They ask, do you think friendships should have a breakup conversation the same way romantic relationships do? And why or why not? That is it's a tough answer because my brain goes in 2 different directions. Very recently, I actually had a kind of situation with a friend who was having problems with one of their long-term friends, and we had a long conversation about what they should do, how they should go about dealing with it. And at the time, I was of the mind of like, fuck them, like if they suck, they suck, and it sucks to suck, so whatever. But they ended up doing the opposite of my advice, which more power to them, and I am so proud of them and impressed by them for it. They ended up sitting down with this friend, having a long conversation, and not only did it end up clarifying a lot of the issues that they were having, but it also ended up helping forge a new reconnection between them. So, it's a different relationship than it was. but that connection still exists because of their communication. And I think that's what it really ends up boiling down to, is this idea of, what do you want out of it? We often get into things like sunk cost fallacy around like, well, I've known them for so long, or this or that, the other thing. And I think that piece can be kind of thrown out. But I think if you really want to look at it pragmatically, it's about what do you want from the connection that you aren't getting? And is it something that person's going to be able to give? Or is it something that you have to find elsewhere? And do you need to communicate that? More often than not, we end up kind of creating narratives in our own mind in sort of a vacuum. And people, unfortunately, have yet to truly master the technique of telepathy. And so if you aren't talking to this person, if you aren't communicating to them, there's no way for them to actually know. You can't assume they know just because you've thought it, right? So it really, it boils down to the idea of what do you want out of this? The other piece of it is that, no relationship lasts. Every connection is finite to some degree. So allowing for connections to flow kind of in and out of your life with as little attachment as possible is going to be helpful for everyone involved. Now, when you look at it from the frame of the sort of the breakup, right? In the ideal world, a breakup conversation isn't, here's my last chance to just unload on you. Here's my last chance to just tell you every reason why you suck, and this is why I hate you, and yada, yada, yada. In the ideal, healthiest, most realized version of the world I wish we lived in, a breakup would be a chance to sit down and say, thank you. I'm so grateful for this. I loved it when you did this, but our connection doesn't work for me. What I need in this world and in this life in this moment is not something that you can give, and that's okay. So please go on with your life and enjoy yourself. That has historically not been the case in most of my interactions, nor does it seem to be something that a lot of other people have experienced. But I think that there is a potential to practice that type of conversation with a friend where the stakes are a little bit lower than sort of a romantic conversation or something, romantic connection or something like that. I've talked about it a lot in recent episodes. Is this idea of like we value friendships differently from romantic relationships, and I don't think personally I like that very much. So I would argue to push, if anything, I'd argue to push the pressure up on the friendship connections. But because we've been socialized to not value it the same way, I think that these are opportunities for you to practice these kinds of conversations in a little bit of a lower stakes scenario. So yeah, it's not a black or white answer. I think you have to ask yourself, do you want something else from this person? If you don't have a conversation with them, will there be lingering questions? Will there be things you need clarified? Will there be things you wish you had communicated? But if the intention of the conversation is just to sit down and say, here's all the reasons why you suck, buy a journal, or better yet, pay a therapist, because that's going to be far more effective and far more beneficial for you long term than to just like unload on some person who's just a person. Even people who do shitty things, they're still just a person. So like, just leave them be, yeah. That leads into the second question. What is the pettiest reason you have unfriended someone? And be honest. I will try to be. I was thinking about this, so the easy one, I don't even know if I would call it petty per se, but when I got divorced, it became a little bit of just like a carte blanche of anyone who knew that we split, and also anybody who knew what I went through in that period and still kept following my ex. That was a real easy block for me, because I was like, look, if you want that level of person in your life, I don't think we can get along. Now, is that petty? I don't know. But I definitely, on reflection, like there are people I wish I had had a bit more of a conversation with. There are people I wish I hadn't been so rash about cutting out. And that again happened more recently, a couple of years ago when I had a different breakup. And this kind of comes up to the most recent time I've blocked somebody. I'll try to be as tactful as I can in the telling of this story. I, a couple months ago, decided to take my Instagram accounts public. I had my personal account private for a long time, just because of the nature of not wanting certain people to be spying on me. I'd gone through a pretty rough situation a year or two ago where I was actively doing everything I could to stay away from a person, but they were hounding me on any and every platform they could find, and then turning around and telling all their friends that it was me who was stalking them. So really weird, really tough situation that I eventually learned it's best to just literally disengage. Just let them tell the stories they're going to tell, because the people who only hear one side of a story and decide that's the truth probably aren't people you want in your life anyway. So it doesn't really matter what they think about you. But a couple months ago, I opened up my account public with the thought that I would, I'm relaunching the podcast. I'm going to want to be a little bit more of a, for lack of a better way of putting it, public figure. So I want people to be able to see what I'm doing. And within a day or two of doing that, a friend of an ex, their account started watching every post, every story, everything I put up like clockwork. Almost immediately from when I would post it, they were watching. And I noticed that for a couple days, and then I thought I would try something different. I had been reflecting on people in my past whose connections I had severed rashly, people who had been friends with exes and things like that, who I had kind of just very quickly and thoughtlessly cut out of my life, and I regretted that. And so I decided to, that is my alarm to take my Seroquel. I decided that I was going to try a different tactic, and I was going to speak to them and give them a chance to be an adult and communicate. And so I messaged them and I said, hey, I see you watching my stories, but we haven't been in contact for almost 2 years, and it makes me really uncomfortable because of my past experiences. And I said, what had happened, and I said, I'm just curious what it is you are looking for in my account. And I got no response, which is fine, totally understandable. But from there, that's when I blocked them. So is that petty? Again, you be the judge. It's just what I did. I don't know. But yeah, I do try my best not to be what I would what I would perceive as petty, but there are times in my life when it's been pretty easy to get the block. Especially around election times, it's pretty easy to be like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm not going to need to see what you think of Big Boy Pierre, I think I would rather pass on that. Last question of the month is a little bit more earnest, and I really liked it. Ironically, it was asked anonymously, but the question is, if you could send an anonymous message to an ex-friend, what would it say? And I've thought about this question quite a bit since reading it, and where I've landed with it is I've been reflecting on sort of like reconnective energy, and where my initial impulse has often gone in the past has been to open with an apology, right? Put yourself in the lower position, the sort of the placating, oh, what was me, I'm the dumb one, I'm bad. And what I've realized is that energy is really unattractive, for lack of a better way of putting it. An ex of mine used to always say, nobody wants to fuck the little guy. And they're spot on. It's this idea of, the martyr complex, right? The woe is me. Oh, I'm just sad, poor, pitiful me, right? It's really boring and it's actually quite repulsive when you watch it and you see it and you're like, ugh, just fucking grow up, right? So I think it's like the idea of with emails. If you haven't replied to an email in a while, you don't open with "Hey, sorry," because that type of communication, not only does it lower you and it make you look kind of bad and unconnected, but it also puts pressure on the other person. If you open with an apology, then they're expected socially to say, "Oh, it's okay," So you're actually shifting the pressure onto them, which is inherently really selfish. So what I would open with instead would be curiosity. I would maybe open with some kind of, I would say, "Hey, you popped up in my thoughts the other day, and I remembered this funny thing that happened, and it made me smile, it made me really happy." And then I would lead with questions. I'd want to hear about what they've been up to, hear about their life, hear about how they're spending their days. And then I would probably end it with some gratitude, and I would just say, thank you for the time that we spent together, and I hope you are well. And if you ever want to connect and speak again, I'm open to it. But yeah, I would be really mindful of opening with the pressure of an apology, or opening with sort of like the first thing you say is like, we're launching into the real big thing, right? Like, nah, get rid of that, build up to it. Don't open with that kind of pressure. But yeah, that's those are my takes on those listener questions. Thank you so much for sending those to me. If you have stories that are triggered by these questions, if you have other questions, if you have just things you want to share about friendship, the good, the bad, the deeply chaotic, whatever it might be, please send them my way, as always, at friendlesspod on Instagram or TikTok, or email me, friendlesspod@gmail.com. So we're going to start the wind down with two new segments that I'm kind of experimenting with. The first is I wanted to share some highlights of my monthly playlist. Now, obviously, I don't have the licensing to play the actual song, so I'm just going to read out the titles and recommendations, but where this stems from is at the start of last year, I started doing these monthly playlists for myself. And so I would, if it was January, I would start a playlist January 1st, and I would add all the music that I was enjoying that month. And then February would start, and I'd start a new playlist, right? And, for a time, I was sharing them on my Substack, and I will be continuing to share them there when that relaunches this week. But I thought I would give a little bit of some highlights on the show. So if you want to follow along, you can follow the link in the show notes to the playlist on Spotify, and you can listen to all the music that I've been enjoying for April. You can go back to the backlog and see everything I listened to January, February, March, yada yada. And you can follow along for May as I build out the next playlist. But the songs that really have been on just deep repeat for me recently. The first song is one that, if you know me, Stars is my favorite band of all time. Torque Campbell is a former guest of the show. I recently got to see them play live again, and it was incredible. I've been listening to Take Me to the Riot from the bedroom demos nonstop, and I love the song. The album that it's off of originally, In Our Bedroom After the War, not historically their best album, but love the song, love the version that is on the bedroom demos, and just like, yeah, everything Stars does, even their worst songs are better than most bands. So yeah, check that out. This next one, I got totally Instagram ad targeted with this one. It's called Get Creative or Get Radicalized by the Toxhards. This is a band I've never heard of. I'd never heard this song before, but I was flipping through some reels and this popped in, and I absolutely loved it. It's super fun, super high energy, and just really speaks to my kind of ethos of I was supposed to be an adult by now. And lastly is a song that I used to listen to back in the day a ton, and I have since circled back to, not for any particular reason, I just think it's a great song. It's called She's Playing Hard to Get Rid Of by Sam Outlaw. The album it's off of, Tenderheart, is absolutely gorgeous, incredible album. I remember seeing him live at the Calgary Folk Fest years ago, and just being absolutely blown away by him. And that song has become a bit of a marker for me. I've used it as an epigraph in a book that I've written, and just the whole album is incredible. But those are just a couple brief highlights of the entire playlist. So if you want to listen to the whole thing, follow along in the link from the link in the show notes. And lastly, to close the show out, I wanted to do what the back half of the reason we do a reflection is so that we can see what we've done well, what we'd like to work on, and then set new intentions for the coming time frame, whatever we set. Now, obviously, traditionally everybody does like a New Year's resolution or something like that. But for me, I find I have forgotten what my New Year's resolution is by the time March rolls around. So what I've decided to do instead is to do some brief or I should say smaller time windows and break them up monthly. So I'm going to set small intentions once a month. I'm going to do them on these reflection episodes and kind of check in with my own personal progress. And if you feel inspired to do the same, I would love to hear what your intentions are. We can share them privately or on the show, however you feel comfortable. But yeah, I just figure, if we're going to reflect, we might as well do something with that information going forward. So I've set two separate intentions for myself, one creative and one centered around friendships and connections. The creative one is, as I've talked about on a few episodes, I have this book of poetry, First Dates with Pro Wrestlers, that I've been tinkering with for better part of, 4 years now. And I had a brand new epiphany with it. I've realized that the reason I've been delaying it is because it's not quite cracked what I want to say with the spirit of the book. So I'm breaking it up into two pieces. First of all, my intention is to launch a chapbook of some of the highlight poems by the end of this month. And then the back half of that is I'm going to take the rest of the poetry and taking some inspiration from Jazz Papadopoulos, former guest. Go listen to their both their episodes. They're incredible. And their book, I feel that way too. They took their poetry and they turned it into a narrative. They wrote this incredible book that's sort of a novel in verse. And I realized that that's sort of what I wanted to explore a little bit deeper around the themes of sort of tenderness and intimacy coupled with pro wrestling. I went to see the monthly Boom show the other day. Sadly, Randy wasn't there, but I was struck yet again by just how evocative pro wrestling is and how universal it can be. And there's so many underlaying themes that it plays with. The idea of intimacy, the way that the wrestlers have to touch each other and hold each other and trust each other. And the way that they're presenting these characters that are so comical to some degree, and they're so exaggerated, and they're playing into not only toxic masculinity, but like hyper elevated, the most toxic possible version of toxic masculinity. And yet, out of the ring, they're just people, and they're gentle, and they're humane, and they're curious, and they're kind. And these are themes that I've tapped into with the poetry, but I still want to go further with it. So I want to write something deeper with what I have, and I don't want to just sort of jump the gun before it's fully cooked, right? So my intention is to split it, to publish the chapbook so that I can get some of these poems out into your beautiful little mitts, and then spend some time really diving into what I want to say with the back half. The juxtaposition of fear of intimacy and tenderness with these sort of larger than life, muscular, statuesque men. The other thing, my intention is to be a lot more mindful with how I connect with people every day. I work remotely, so it's really easy for me to lose sometimes days at a time going between, work and then just sort of slipping into my comfort routines of isolation. So for May, what I intend to do is every day, once a day, make some kind of connection with a friend. It might be fleeting, it might be small, but I'm going to mindfully reach out to them. I'm going to be the one who reaches out, who messages them, Maybe I say, I text them, how you live in text, maybe, or I send them a meme, or I set up a coffee date, or whatever it might be. I ask about them. What I want to make sure is framed behind it is that every day, once a day, I'm reaching out to someone and I'm letting them know, not only did I think of them, but just reminding them that they are important, not only to me, but to themselves. It's important that they are alive. It's important that they are on this earth, that they are continuing to do whatever it is that they're doing, and that I'm grateful that they have come into my life at this point. So those are my intentions: poetry and being a brave boy as I reach out to friends. What are your intentions? Are you interested in participating in this with me? Would you like to set your own intention? Let me know. friendlesspod@gmail.com. If you want to share them on Instagram, if you want to make a post, please do. I will reshare it. I would love to see what you come up with. But that is going to be a wrap on another beautiful, beautiful month of Friendless. If you loved the snippets of the conversations that I highlighted today, be sure to go back and listen to the full episodes. You are going to learn so much more from every guest. They are just brimming with wisdom and insight and just beautiful, beautiful experiences and stories that you really shouldn't miss. And if this show resonates with you, please be sure to give it a 5-star rating wherever you listened. Maybe you want to share it with a friend. Even better, maybe you want to just let me know directly. What's working? What did you love? What do you want to hear more of? Send me a message at FriendlessPod, Instagram and TikTok, Instagram or TikTok, or friendlesspod@gmail.com. I'm doing my best to grow this show as broadly as I can in this team of one, but I have loads of new interviews coming down the pipeline. I have new solo episodes planned that I want to do on more than a monthly basis. I just do not have the capacity right now, but I'm working on it. I'm relaunching the Substack this week, so be sure to sign up for that. It is free. It's a blast. You're going to love it. And then, as always, there's just going to be new, wacky, weird stuff coming down the pipeline that I will let you know about as it comes. But before any of that, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for continuing to listen. Thank you for showing up and being here with me. And I hope I will see you back here again next week with another brand new episode. But hey, I'm not going to worry about that right now. And neither should you, because that is then and this is now. So for now, all I'll say is I love you and I wish you well. Fun and safety, sweet peas.